The air in my sister Sarah's cramped living room was thick with the smell of stale coffee and unspoken resentment. It was Thanksgiving, a holiday I usually dreaded, but this year I had a special announcement. My 3 kids, 10-year-old Ethan, 7-year-old Lily, and 5-year-old Noah, were scattered around the room like discarded toys, already on Sarah's last nerve. They were always on someone's nerve, usually hers. But today, none of that mattered. Today was about me. I cleared my throat, taking a dramatic pause. My brother-in-law, Mark, looked up from his phone, a flicker of mild interest in his usually bored eyes. Sarah, however, just sighed, probably anticipating another request for money or a favor. She knew me too well, or so she thought. "So," I began, a wide, triumphant smile plastered on my face, "I have some wonderful news." Silence. The kids didn't even look up from their tablets. Classic. "I'm pregnant again," I practically shrieked, beaming. The reaction was underwhelming. Mark's eyes widened slightly before he quickly looked back at his phone. Sarah, my ever-patient, ever-suffering older sister, slowly put down her coffee mug. Her face, usually a canvas of weary acceptance, contorted into something I rarely saw. Pure, unadulterated fury. Her lips thinned, and her eyes, usually soft and brown, hardened into chips of obsidian. "You're what, Melanie?" she asked, her voice barely a whisper, yet it cut through the room like a razor. "Pregnant," I repeated, my smile unwavering. "Isn't it amazing? Another little bundle of joy." I even patted my still flat belly for emphasis. Sarah stood up, her movements stiff and deliberate. She walked over to the window, her back to me, her shoulders rigid. I could feel the tension radiating off her, but I chose to ignore it. What was her problem anyway? This was my news, my happiness. "Melanie," she finally said, her voice strained. "We need to talk, now." I rolled my eyes. Always so dramatic, but I knew this conversation was inevitable. It always was with Sarah. If you're enjoying this story, don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more captivating tales. Sarah led me into the kitchen, the door swinging shut with a soft click that felt strangely final. The kids, oblivious as ever, continued their noisy games in the living room. The silence in the kitchen was deafening, punctuated only by the distant sounds of holiday cartoons. She turned to face me, her arms crossed over her chest. Her eyes, usually filled with a gentle pity for my chaotic life, were now blazing with an intensity I hadn't seen directed at me since we were teenagers, and I'd borrowed her favorite sweater without asking. "Melanie, what are you doing?" she asked, her voice low and dangerous. "What do you mean? What am I doing?" I countered, feigning innocence. "I told you, I'm pregnant. It's a blessing." "A blessing?" she scoffed, a humorless laugh escaping her lips. "A blessing for whom, Melanie? Certainly not for these 3 children out there, who you pawn off on me every other week. And certainly not for me, who has practically raised them for you." Her words stung, not because they were untrue, but because she was finally saying them out loud. I hated being called out, especially when I knew, deep down, she had a point. But I wasn't about to admit it. "That's not fair, Sarah. I'm their mother." "I do my best." My voice rose, a familiar whine creeping in. "Your best?" she repeated, shaking her head. "Your best involves dropping them off at my doorstep at a moment's notice, expecting me to feed them, bathe them, help them with their homework, and deal with their tantrums, all while you're off finding yourself or pursuing your dreams." Her voice was getting louder now, a tremor of frustration running through it. I flinched. She was hitting too close to home. My dreams often involved late-night parties and forgetting to set an alarm for school drop-offs. But that was my business, not hers. "You always make me out to be the bad guy," I mumbled, looking away. "You are the bad guy, Melanie. You're selfish. You're irresponsible. You bring these innocent lives into the world, and then you expect others to pick up the pieces because you can't be bothered to be a mother." Tears welled up in her eyes, not of sadness, but of pure, simmering rage. I had never seen Sarah so openly furious. It was unnerving. She was usually the stoic one, the rock, but even rocks can crack under immense pressure. Sarah took a deep, shaky breath, trying to regain some semblance of composure. "This has to stop, Melanie. I can't do it anymore." Do what? I asked, feigning ignorance, though my stomach churned with a sense of dread. Raise your children, she practically screamed, finally losing her carefully constructed calm. Ethan, Lily, Noah, they call me Auntie Mom. Do you know how that feels? To be their primary caregiver? To be the one they run to when they're hurt or scared? While you flit in and out of their lives like some kind of fun aunt who occasionally buys them a toy? My jaw tightened. She was really laying it on thick now. It wasn't my fault I was more fun than she was. She was always so serious, so practical. I'm their mother, Sarah, I insisted, though it sounded hollow even to my own ears. Are you, Melanie? Are you really? Her voice was laced with bitter sarcasm. Because a mother provides stability. A mother provides consistency. A mother doesn't rely on her older sister to bail her out every single time she makes a poor decision. She walked closer to me, her eyes boring into mine. I've sacrificed my own life for yours, Melanie. My career, my free time, my peace of mind. All of it has been consumed by your choices. And now, you're doing it again. You're bringing another child into this chaos. Another child that you'll inevitably expect me to care for. I tried to interrupt, to make an excuse, but she held up a hand, silencing me. No, listen to me. This is my home. These are my rules. I love Ethan, Lily, and Noah more than words can say. But I can't do this anymore. I can't keep enabling you. So here's how it's going to be. Her voice was firm, unwavering. You need to find a way to take full responsibility for your children. All of them. And that means you can no longer rely on me for childcare, for financial help, or for anything else related to their upbringing. My mouth dropped open. You can't be serious. I've never been more serious in my life, she said, her voice cold as ice. This is my ultimatum, Melanie. Figure it out, or you're on your own. Completely. The drive home was a blur of indignant tears and simmering resentment. How dare Sarah speak to me like that? How dare she give me an ultimatum, especially on Thanksgiving? She was supposed to be my sister, my support system, not some kind of judgmental tyrant. The kids, sensing the shift in my mood, were unusually quiet in the back seat. Even their incessant bickering had ceased. They knew when Mom was in a mood, and it usually meant they were in for a rough ride. Mommy, why is Auntie Sarah mad? Lily whispered from her car seat, her big eyes wide and innocent in the rearview mirror. Auntie Sarah isn't mad, sweetie, I lied, forcing a smile. She's just tired. She has a lot on her plate. It was easier to make excuses for Sarah than to admit the truth. She was tired of me. When we got back to my tiny, cluttered apartment, the reality of Sarah's words began to sink in. No more dropping the kids off at her house when I had a sudden urge to go out. No more emergency loans for rent or groceries. No more free babysitting. Panic began to set in. How was I going to manage? My current boyfriend, Jake, was barely employed, and his commitment to fatherhood was, shall we say, debatable. He was good for a laugh and a night out, but not much else. And my previous partners, the fathers of Ethan, Lily, and Noah, were even less reliable. I paced my small living room, the dirty laundry piled in the corner mocking my desperation. Sarah had always been my safety net, my fallback plan. Without her, I was adrift. And now, with another baby on the way, the weight of my choices felt crushing. But then, a familiar defiance rose within me. I wasn't going to let Sarah win. I wasn't going to let her see me fail. I would figure something out. I always did. Or at least, I always had before. Don't miss out on the rest of this dramatic story. Subscribe to the channel now for updates and more compelling content. The days that followed Sarah's ultimatum were a rude awakening. The routine I had so effortlessly and irresponsibly maintained began to crumble. School drop-offs became a frantic scramble. Dinners were often late and consisted of whatever I could throw together quickly. Homework became a battle, as I lacked the patience and, frankly, the knowledge to help with some of the more complex assignments. One evening, Ethan came home from school with a note from his teacher. Ethan has been consistently late for school, and his homework is often incomplete, it read. We need to address these issues to ensure his academic success. I crumpled the note in my hand, a wave of shame washing over me, quickly followed by anger. It was all Sarah's fault. If she hadn't cut me off, I wouldn't be in this mess. She was punishing me, and by extension, punishing my kids. The apartment, once just cluttered, now felt genuinely chaotic. Toys were everywhere, dishes piled up in the sink, and the scent of unwashed laundry lingered in the air. I was constantly exhausted, constantly stressed. The morning sickness from my pregnancy didn't help, making even simple tasks feel monumental. I tried to call Jake, hoping he might offer some support, but his phone went straight to voicemail. Again. He was probably out with his friends, oblivious to the storm brewing in my life. The fathers of my other children were, as expected, even less responsive. One afternoon, Lily came to me, her lower lip trembling. "Mommy, I miss Auntie Sarah. Can we go to her house?" My heart ached, a sharp, unwelcome pain. Even my own children preferred Sarah's house to mine. It was a bitter pill to swallow. "Auntie Sarah is busy right now, sweetie," I said, trying to keep my voice light, but it cracked slightly. "We'll see her soon." I wasn't sure if that was a promise I could keep. As weeks turned into a month, the isolation deepened. My friends, who were once happy to meet for coffee or a night out, slowly started to drift away. Their invitations became less frequent, their calls less returned. I was always too busy, too tired, too overwhelmed to join them. My life had become a relentless cycle of childcare, housework, and the nagging worry of how to make ends meet. The grocery bills were astronomical, and despite my best efforts, money was always tight. I had to cut back on pretty much everything, which meant no more new clothes for me, no more frivolous outings, and even cutting back on some of the kids' activities. Ethan had to drop out of his soccer league, and Lily's dance classes were put on hold. Their disappointment was palpable. Ethan became sullen and withdrawn, spending most of his time holed up in his room. Lily, usually a bright and bubbly child, was often quiet, her eyes mirroring the sadness I felt. Noah, the youngest, cried more often, confused by the sudden change in his routine and the constant tension in the air. I tried to get a part-time job, but finding something that fit around school schedules, childcare, and my increasing pregnancy fatigue was nearly impossible. The few interviews I managed to get ended in polite rejections. My resume was a patchwork of unfinished studies and short-term jobs, none of which demonstrated any real commitment or skill. I started resenting Sarah even more. This was her fault. If she had just continued to help, none of this would be happening. I convinced myself that she was being cruel, that she enjoyed seeing me struggle. It was easier to blame her than to confront the uncomfortable truth. I had brought this upon myself. One particularly difficult afternoon, after a screaming match with Ethan about his refusal to do his chores, and a tearful Lily begging for a new toy I couldn't afford, I snapped. I needed help. I needed Sarah. I packed the kids into the car, ignoring their protests, and drove straight to Sarah's house. It had been weeks since I'd seen her, and the thought of facing her again filled me with a mixture of dread and desperate hope. I knocked on the door, my heart pounding. Mark opened it, his face registering surprise, then a flicker of annoyance. "Melanie?" he said, clearly not expecting me. "What are you doing here?" "I need to talk to Sarah," I said, my voice tight. "It's important." He hesitated for a moment, then stepped aside, letting us in. The house was, as always, meticulously clean and orderly. The contrast with my own chaotic apartment was stark and painful. Sarah emerged from the kitchen, wiping her hands on a dish towel. Her expression, when she saw me and the kids, was unreadable. "Melanie," she said, her voice flat. "Sarah, please," I began, my voice cracking. "I can't do this anymore. I'm falling apart. The kids, they're struggling. I need your help. Just for a little while, until I get back on my feet." I expected to see a softening in her eyes, a hint of the old Sarah who always caved to my pleas. Instead, her face remained impassive, almost cold. "I told you, Melanie," she said, her voice calm but firm. "I can't. I won't. I meant what I said. But I'm pregnant, and with 3 other kids. What am I supposed to do?" I cried, tears finally streaming down my face. I played the pregnancy card, hoping it would work. It usually did. She looked at me, a profound sadness in her eyes, but also an unyielding resolve. "You have to figure it out, Melanie. You made these choices. You have to live with the consequences. I love you, but I can't be your crutch anymore. It's not fair to me. and it's not fair to your children. My world crumbled. There was no going back. She wasn't going to help. Has Melanie finally hit rock bottom? Find out what happens next by subscribing to the channel for more gripping stories. The rejection from Sarah hit harder than anything before. It was the final straw, the complete severing of the last safety net I had. I drove home in a daze, the kids silent and sensing my despair. Over the next few weeks, things spiraled even further. My apartment became a true disaster zone. The kids were often late for school, or missed it entirely. My temper was frayed, and I found myself snapping at them constantly. They, in turn, became more withdrawn, their laughter replaced by a quiet sadness. One evening, I found Ethan trying to make dinner for Lily and Noah, burning toast in the process. The smell of smoke filled the tiny apartment, and my heart clenched with a painful mix of guilt and self-pity. My 10-year-old son was trying to take care of his younger siblings because I was incapable. "Ethan, what are you doing?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. "We were hungry, Mom," he said, his eyes downcast. "You were sleeping." I looked at the clock. It was almost 8 p.m. I had been asleep on the couch for hours, exhausted by the relentless demands of my pregnancy and my increasingly chaotic life. The shame was overwhelming. That night, after the kids were finally asleep, I sat in the darkness, surrounded by the mess I had created. The walls of my apartment felt like they were closing in on me. The realization that I was failing my children, truly failing them, settled upon me like a heavy blanket. They deserved so much more than this. They deserved a stable home, consistent care, and a mother who was present and capable. The baby inside me fluttered, a gentle reminder of the new life I was bringing into this mess. What kind of mother was I going to be to this child? The same kind I was to the others. The thought was unbearable. The next morning, I woke up with a profound sense of clarity, albeit a painful one. I couldn't keep doing this. Not for myself, and certainly not for my children. I needed to change. But how? The first step was the hardest. I called Sarah. My hand trembled as I dialed her number, expecting her to hang up on me. But she answered, her voice cautious. "Sarah," I said, my voice hoarse. I need your help. Not with the kids, with me." There was a long silence on the other end, and I braced myself for rejection. "What kind of help, Melanie?" she finally asked, her voice still wary. "I need to change," I admitted, the words tasting bitter on my tongue but feeling liberating at the same time. "I need to learn how to be a real mother. I need to get my life together. I don't know how to do it alone." Another pause. I could almost hear her processing my words, dissecting them for any hidden motives. "Are you serious, Melanie?" she asked, a hint of something resembling hope in her voice. "Yes," I choked out, tears blurring my vision. "I'm so tired of this. I'm tired of failing. My kids, they deserve better, and I want to be better. Please, Sarah, just tell me what to do. I'll do anything." She sighed, a long, weary exhalation. "Okay, Melanie, this isn't going to be easy. It's going to be the hardest thing you've ever done. And I'm not going to bail you out, but I will help you figure out the steps. For the kids' sake." A wave of relief washed over me, so potent it almost brought me to my knees. It wasn't the immediate rescue I had always expected from her, but it was something far more meaningful, a chance to truly change. Sarah didn't miraculously take my kids back, nor did she hand me a wad of cash. Instead, she started with small, practical steps. She helped me research affordable childcare options, guiding me through the confusing paperwork. She pointed me towards resources for single mothers and parenting classes. She even helped me create a budget, a concept I had always scoffed at. It was excruciatingly difficult. There were days I wanted to give up, to revert to my old ways, days when the exhaustion felt unbearable, and the lure of irresponsibility was strong. But then I would look at Ethan, Lily, and Noah, their faces etched with the lingering sadness of my neglect, and I would remember why I was doing this. And I would think of the new life growing inside me, a chance to start fresh, to be the mother this child deserved from the very beginning. I found a part-time job working evenings, cleaning offices after hours. It was hard, thankless work, but it paid the bills, albeit barely. I started attending parenting classes, listening intently to advice I had always dismissed. I learned about setting boundaries, about positive reinforcement, about the importance of routine and consistency. My apartment slowly, painstakingly, began to transform. Clutter was replaced by order, dirty dishes by clean ones. My relationship with my children began to mend, slowly but surely. There were still difficult moments, arguments and tears, but now there was also genuine connection, real conversations, and even laughter. Sarah was still cautious, still keeping her distance, but her words of encouragement were like beacons in the darkness. "You're doing well, Melanie," she would say, her voice softer now. "Keep going." I knew the road ahead was long, filled with challenges and setbacks. I had caused a lot of pain, and rebuilding trust, especially with my children, would take time. But for the first time in my life, I wasn't running away from responsibility. I was facing it head-on, guided by the quiet strength of my sister's unwavering boundaries and the love for my children. I had finally hit rock bottom, and in doing so, I had found the first shaky steps towards redemption. Thank you for watching. If this story touched you, please subscribe to our channel for more real-life dramas and inspiring journeys.